This is Brother Beyond the Craft with Neil Thomas Allen and Taz Bachu.
Hello and welcome to Brother Beyond the Craft. This is our finale of season 2. My name is Neil Thomas Allen and I am joined as always by my Masonic man wife, Taz Bachu. Taz, how the devil are you, love?
I'm very well, happy dearest. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. I've just done my first home spin class and I feel like a dead man walking, to be completely honest. I regret buying any of that equipment, but if it can get the COVID chunk off, then worth it, right?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think, you know, since we last met, you've got into the home workouts and you've grown a caterpillar on your top lip.
That's it. I'm trying a couple of things new because no one can essentially see me during work or leisure hours. So we're going to.
Actually, I was just going to say, I should say, for those people that aren't watching on YouTube, Neil, the famous Neil Thomas Allen moustache that appears during the winter months is back.
We're giving it a go. Okay, and we are also joined by our delightful ginger producer Josh. How the devil are we, sir?
I am very well, thank you. I am very well. I actually had a beard trim the other day, but I'm getting ready for Movember, and it's all going off. Full clean shave. It'll be the first time I've been clean shaven since I was like 11, and then.
I don't think we're gonna recognise you, mate.
No, I don't. You're gonna be like, hey, who's that 12-year-old who keeps doing our podcast with us? And then full on tash.
Beautiful. You'll be the air lieutenant again, which you used to be.
Yes,
with that little,
exactly.
With that little moustache. And we are also joined this afternoon, as always, by our 400,000 foot man rocking the man bun. It's Jack Saunders. Jack, how are we, sir?
Lovely, yeah, great to be here again. Always enjoying it. Even though I am a million foot tall, I seem to lack the ability to grow a fine moustache or a full beard. So I am just.
It's a bit windy. It's a bit windy up there, so it just kind of blows off when it grows. I'd imagine. For those who aren't watching on the video, he's sporting a rather nice maroon Mark Mason's polo, which is really rather nice. Where'd you get that, mate?
So as a proud Essex Mark Mason, we've got these wonderful little polo shirts, and I thought I'd show it off this evening.
Well, it's good that you did, because that's an excellent segue. So this edition, we are jumping into the last of the 86 St James orders, which I think by and large is the one that people are looking forward to most, which is the Mark degree. And in order for us to deep dive into it, we are joined by someone who I am extremely excited and honoured to have with us. He is the Deputy President of the General Board and the Deputy President, going back to the previous podcast, of the Grandmasters Royal Ark Mariners Council, very worshipful brother Bill Duval. Bill, how the devil are you, sir?
I'm delighted to be here, actually, Neil, and I'm absolutely delighted to meet you all. And in terms of my health, if you see me bobbing and weaving a bit, it's because, as I said to you, I have a bit of a back issue at the present time. It's not nervousness; it's definitely a back issue that I've got.
You're looking well. You're looking well. So let's deep dive into it. What I'd like to know first is a little bit about yourself. And how you got involved in Freemasonry in the first place, and then within the Mark degree in particular.
Yeah, sure. Well, I had no family in Freemasonry before I was asked to join, although there is a rumour that my grandfather was a Freemason, but sadly he died way before I was old enough to become a Mason, so I've been unable to put any flesh on that, so I'm not entirely sure that was the case. But I was initiated in January of 1987 into a lodge in London, and then from there really I moved on to the Holy Royal Arch, and I was exhorted in May of 1990, And I remember that quite clearly because it was just a few days after my birthday. And I will add, around this time also, I had managed to get myself married, and we had also had a daughter. So there was a lot going on at that particular time. And then I was advanced into the Mark degree in the same year, in October of 1990. And then elevated into the Royal Ark Mariner in April 1997. And there's quite a gap there, which you'll probably pick up on, that 7-year gap. And I'm happy to tell you the reason for it, if you ask.
What was the reason?
Yeah.
The real reason was because, quite simply, my Mark Lodge at the time, the Drury Lane Lodge of Mark Master Masons, didn't have a ram attached to it. There was no ram moored to it, and I think there was a lack of effort, perhaps, on my part. I maybe should have flushed out another lodge that had a Royal Ark Mariner attached to it. But what happened was the Drury Lane Lodge consecrated a Royal Ark Mariner, and I was, I think, the first candidate into it. So in the end, it was quite a good thing, and obviously from there on in, I've joined many other units out of Mark Mason's Hall. But that's the main reason. I'm sorry to make you ask the question, but it's not one I like to really sell, because I mean the 7-year gap's quite a long gap, and it's not a very good advert really. But there was a reason for it.
So, Bill, the kind of main question, the kind of fundamental question for anyone who doesn't already know much about Mark, what is the general background story to the order, and the kind of underlying principles and the basics of what Mark really is?
Yeah, sure. So I think perhaps the best way to provide some background about the order of Master Masons is to actually start by unmasking the Mark ceremony and how that plays out. It's probably a good way of doing it. And candidates joining the Mark take on the role of a fellow craft at the building of King Solomon's Temple. The Mark ceremony, which is known as the Ceremony of Advancement, it comprises of 2 parts. The first candidates are acknowledged as Mark Men, after which they are then advanced to the rank of Mark Master. And in craft Freemasonry, during the lecture on the 2nd degree tracing board, we're informed that there's an immense number of operative masons who are employed at the building of King Solomon's Temple. And we're also told that this immense number consisted of entered apprentices and fellow crafts. We're further told that these operative masons were paid wages as a reward for what they did. The entered apprentices, they were paid, as we all know, an allowance of corn, wine and oil, and the fellow crafts received their wages in specie, which is money in the form of coins as opposed to notes. That large number of operative masons was actually 110,000 in total. The fellow crafts, or Mark Men, not only prepared materials for the building of King Solomon's Temple, they also acted as mentors, and they were teaching the entered apprentices. 80,000 operative masons were employed as builders or hewers at the temple, and 30,000 were deployed in the forests of Lebanon, and when they were tasked to prepare timber for the temple. But to ensure there was adequate management of this large number of 110,000 operative masons, they were divided into 1,100 lodges, and each lodge therefore had 100 workmen in it. Each of the 1,100 lodges had 3 senior officers that were in charge, so there was a total of 3,300 senior officers. Now, after a Mark man had prepared his work, he would place his personal mark on it to indicate that it was his work. And by adding his mark to his work, he was making sure that it was recognised as his. But perhaps more importantly, he was making his mark on his work to ensure that he was paid and rewarded for what he had prepared. And once the Mark man had added his personal mark to his work, it was passed up the assembly line for further inspection and quality control, which was kind of undertaken by 3 senior lodge officers in charge. And these 3 senior officers were then tasked with assessing and approving the quality and the shape and the size of the work for the temple after it had been prepared by each of these marked men. And those senior officers were also responsible for ensuring that the work that they received was prepared in accordance with the plans that they had received for the building of the temple. And once the senior officer was satisfied that the work was suitable for use in the temple, he would add a mark of approval to it. And it was only when that approval or a mark was put on it that the materials could be used for construction purposes. And unapproved materials were just filtered out at that point. And then finally, those unapproved materials were just disposed of, as they really of were no further use. But like all good management structures, these 3,300 senior officers were then broken down into a further 100 lodges, smaller lodges of 33 of the senior officers in each of the lodge. And 3 mark masters or overseers were selected to preside over those 100 lodges. And these 3 officers were responsible for overseeing the payment of wages. I suppose they could be deemed as being payroll department, really. Our ceremony is therefore themed around the process of approving materials for the building of King Solomon's Temple and the payment of wages to mark masters for their role in supervision, as well as the payment of wages to mark men for the work that they had undertaken in preparing those materials. So hopefully that should give you some idea about what the mark degree is about.
So obviously the emphasis being on the fellow craft kind of masons and their role that they played in building the temple. So obviously the kind of unofficial title for Mark is the continuation of the second degree. You know, do you feel that that's a fair kind of assessment?
Yeah, I do, because it's quite clear that, particularly in the second degree tracing board, that you can see that the fellow crafts go off and get their materials. And I think it is a continuation of the second degree. And in fact, in as we know, in many other Grand Lodges where they don't follow the United Grand Lodge of England 1, 2, 3 Royal Arch, the mark comes in at that point. And I think it's logical that's where it should be.
Well, I certainly did joined Mark before I joined Chapter. So I did my first, second and third degree, then completed my second by doing Mark, and then joined Chapter afterwards. Taz, you did the same, I think, didn't you? And Neil, did you as well? Did you join Mark and then Chapter, or Jack?
I did, yeah. So I joined the kind of, at the time it was the newest Mark Lodge in London. So I'm a member of Clemency, and I think you were, or you might be an honorary member as well, Bill.
Yeah, I was seconded to the lodge, shall we say, to enable it to be consecrated, because you needed some past masters, and I'm honoured to be an honorary member of that lodge. Yeah.
And it's so they had the consecration in the morning, and then they broke off for lunch, and then we sort of turned up and was advanced literally straight after. So we're all, I think all 3 of us are in Clemency, and then Jack,
we are Clemency Mark men.
We are indeed. Jack, over to you.
So Bill, like throughout this series, we've been looking at obviously the various orders that are administrated from Mark Mason's Hall, and there's quite a lot for newer brethren that are looking to explore these degrees to find out about all the various routes they can take. Can you tell us something that's quite unique to Mark Masonry that could?
Unique to Mark Masonry. Well, that's quite an interesting statement. Yeah, I'll tell you what. I can. But I'm going to refer it back a little bit here to bring it into context with myself, which will probably help me with why I think it's unique. because obviously that's a subjective thing, isn't it? I think people will have different views, but it was kind of like really early in my Masonic membership when I met my proposer into Mark Masonry. I think I'll tell you about that because we had a business premises and we shared some office space. And what we did was we placed an advert because the offices were spare. And I didn't know at first, but when we got a new tenant, he turned out to be a Freemason. And then eventually we did establish with each other that we were both Freemasons, and we started to visit each other's craft lodges. My tenant then kind of broached a subject with me of joining a Mark, and I think it was because he had been elected as master of the lodge, and I assume he was looking for a candidate to advance, and I probably looked like a likely suspect for that. And as I say, I agreed to join. I think what I find most impressive about the Order of Mark Master Masons is how it recognises its members' achievements and how it encourages members to progress through the lodge offices, through provincial Grand Lodges offices, and in fact, ultimately into Grand Lodge offices. The Order, I believe, is truly superb at recognising its members' attributes. And it's also superb in supporting those who support it with their various skills and their talents. But I'm lucky to have held a few senior appointments at provincial level in the Mark, and more recently at Grand Lodge during my 30 years. I've seen hundreds and hundreds of advancement ceremonies, and no matter how many times I see an advancement ceremony, it never fails to put a smile on my face. As I watch that ceremony play out and the way the candidates interact with the officers and the members, everyone feels like they're taking part in an advancement ceremony. I mean, even when you're just sitting on the sidelines, it's a really interactive, it's highly visible, it's easy to follow. You can follow all the twists and turns, and it all adds to the overall enjoyment. Anyone who's been through the advancement ceremony, whether as a candidate, as an officer, or even as an observer, will understand exactly what I'm saying. But it's not just the ceremony that makes Mark special for me, it's its members. When you arrive at a Mark meeting, you're always given a friendly welcome. As soon as you walk through the door of a Mark Lodge, you can feel that friendship. It kind of bursts out at you. There's a camaraderie. There's a feeling of community and companionship. In my opinion, the Order is second to none. But that said, we're a very, very lucky Order because we have a ceremony that really lends itself to a feeling of like community and companionship. And I think that's what makes the Mark unique for me.
So obviously we've done these podcasts about, you know, each one of the orders and whatnot, and I don't think I've seen it before yet that when someone's mentioned, you know, the sheer enjoyment of the advancement ceremony, literally all of us, like a smile lit up. And I think you won't find that in any other of the kind of other degrees, is that instant like click of like, yeah, it's brilliant. Because you're so right, even being, you know, like on the back benches or just going along and visiting, you do feel included. And that's something I think, you know, we're talking, the question is based on, you know, a unique thing, but it is to feel that the whole room is involved, even if they're just there visiting, in my mind is I think why the advancement ceremony is, you know, one of the best, and definitely one of the most enjoyable, without question.
Well, as we know, there are parts of the ceremony where vast numbers of the lodge do take part, and that really is a brings you all together. And I think, you know, you can't. I don't think that's anywhere else. I don't think you see everybody coming together in anything else.
And I love it because some people would have done it for the 50th time, and they always get, oh, all right, then I'll get up and do it, and they always always enjoy it. It's quite, yeah. That's one of the most. I would say that's probably one of the unique things about the advancement of the Mark degree.
Well, I always think to myself, Neil, that if during that part of the ceremony, I've got to take part, because if there's money on offer, I'm there.
So I think we've bigged up kind of the advancement ceremony and the kind of the uniqueness of the order. But for those listeners that perhaps aren't part of the Mark, how do you qualify to join?
Yeah. So how do you join the Mark? Well, this might seem pretty obvious, but all candidates that want to be advanced into the order of Mark Master Masons will need a proposer and a seconder, obviously. However, that really shouldn't be a hurdle to entry. Presently, we've got over 1,500 lodges administered by Mark Grand Lodge, and a membership of in excess of 33,000. So one of the easiest ways is to approach a few members of your craft lodge. That could easily prove to be a good route to membership. If approaching members of your own lodge don't yield fruit, then there are 42 provinces and 26 districts within the Grand Lodge of Master Masons, all of which I'm sure would welcome a request to join and happily provide you with a proposer and seconder. You'll need to be a Master Mason. Sorry, a Master Mason. You would need to have gone through the third degree in craft masonry. And another thing you can always do is you can always approach Mark Grand Lodge. You can visit the website for Mark Masons Hall. You need to be a subscribing member of a regular craft lodge of Freemasons at the time of your advancement. And as I said, you need to have been raised to the sublime degree of a Master Mason. In fact, in the charge after initiation in the craft, we're instructed, aren't we, to make a daily advancement in our Masonic knowledge. So, and after completing the third degree of craft masonry, many Master Masons go on to complete the third degree and join the Holy Royal Arch. Well, as we said earlier, we touched on earlier, in like manner, some craft Masons may wish to complete the second degree and be advanced to the degree of Mark Master Mason. But I think it's relatively easy to join. As I say, you've only got to have that third degree and a proposer and a seconder, and you're in business.
So we spoke a little bit about how to join the order, but once you're a member of the order, Bill, what sort of regalia is required for the members?
Regalia? Yeah, well, there's an apron, of course. The apron of a Mark Master Mason is very similar in look to that of a Master Mason in the craft. Perhaps the difference is that the border around the apron is of crimson and light blue. And they're also the three rosettes that you get on the apron. They're also in crimson and light blue. In addition, members wear a breast jewel, which is a keystone. And the keystone is linked to a ribbon by a bar, and to which it's attached a Lewis, which joins the stone to the bar. And that's inserted into the keystone. The keystone's got, and without ruining too much, it's got some characters engraved on the back and the front, and the significance of those will be explained during the ceremony. Lodge officers, they wear a collar, which is also crimson and blue. And attached to that is the jewel of their office, very similar to the craft. Masters and past masters wear an apron, similar to the craft. Again, the three rosettes are replaced by three tours. I think sometimes they're referred to as levels. In fact, I found that quite interesting because they get called different things. So, being a bit of a geek, I suppose I thought, I'll tell you what, I'm going to look this up in the Mark constitutions to see how these are actually described. And I found the following description, if you'll bear with me. It says, perpendicular lines with horizontal lines forming three several sets of two right angles. I think we'll leave that at tours. Masters wear a collar as well. Installed masters, they have a collar which is again in light blue and crimson, and to that collar is attached a jewel, again in the shape of a keystone. And the master of the lodge has a square on his keystone, and past masters have a square and a small keystone with the Lewis. And I suppose there's also provincial grand officers. Shall I go on? And yeah.
Well, I think it's worth mentioning that when you start getting from provincial rank upwards, I think it's fair to say that they are probably easily the most beautiful aprons in all of Freemasonry. I think, with the level of detail in them, especially when you get to grand rank. The grand rank aprons are stunning for the mark.
Yeah, I think what sets them off is the colour change when it goes from light blue and crimson to dark blue and crimson. And of course, there's the two versions of dress and the undress. And I do think that both versions do stand out well. The emblems stand out very well on them. And particularly, as you say, the grand officers one with they have the full bullion gold round the edges. They are very smart. And of course, when you go to something like Grand Lodge, it's the same obviously in most Grand Lodges. It is quite a spectacle to see the grand officers coming in full dress regalia with the full chains and so on and so forth. Well, as indeed it is a provincial Grand Lodge. So yeah, the regalia is very similar to the craft, but it has a great deal of colour about it as well.
I really like that. I remember on my mark advancement doing, I think, the obligation, and I was staring at, I think it was the Metropolitan Grandmaster's apron, potentially.
You mean provincial Grandmaster?
Provincial Grandmaster, one of them. He had a lovely apron, either way. Moving on swiftly. Shut up, Neil. I think we've drawn some really good kind of parallels just in terms of the regalia to the craft, and I think one of the things that is different in a way is the composition of the Mark Lodge. So, Bill, would you be able to kind of talk us through how that is different and what that would look like to somebody new?
Yeah, I think initially when you enter a Mark Lodge, you might get the feeling of it's similar to a craft lodge, but all of a sudden a few officers kind of change that perspective. A Mark Mason's Lodge, as I said, quite similar. We have, give you an idea, we have a worshipful master, and in this instance he represents Adoniram. And Adoniram was the chief overseer of the building of King Solomon's temple. I won't go too much into that because obviously that will ruin some other parts of other people's ceremonies. We have two wardens, as usual, a senior one and a junior, and they carry certain implements as well, slightly different to the craft. One of them has an axe, which must have been used at the time for maybe cutting down trees. It has other uses as well in the lodge. We have three additional officers who actually sit in the centre of the room, and I alluded to them earlier. They're the three overseers, and they're there specifically to examine and approve the materials for the holy building. We've got a registrar of marks. He keeps a pictorial record of each brother's mark, and he keeps them in the lodge books because obviously we want to make sure that if you're paying the wages to people, you're paying them to the right people, so you keep a register of them. We have the two deacons who escort the candidates around, and we have the standard other officers like the inner guard, the treasurer, secretary, DC, etc., etc. So we're fairly similar, but there's that big difference is in the middle of the middle of the lodge with the three additional officers. So in theory, you could say it takes a little bit longer to get to the mark chair because obviously you've got more offices to pass through. It doesn't always work like that because obviously with a longer period of time, sometimes there's people falling out of lodges and they don't go on through the offices. For work and other reasons. So sometimes gaps do appear. So it doesn't always pan out to take a long time to go through the mark chair, but there is occasions when those three offices come in very handy if you want to pick up a little bit more time for your ritual before entering the chair.
I think that was quite a nice thing for me when I joined the Mark. It was the first order that I joined beyond the craft, and the fact that it was quite familiar, but with some changes, it felt quite easy to adjust to it. It wasn't like a big thing. Whereas when I joined chapter and the room was completely different with all different offices, that took a bit more time to get into. But in the Mark degree, it was a bit more easier to get to grips with.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think because the lodge room looks and feels familiar, I think you immediately feel comfortable when you're coming into the lodge, you know, and you're used to being led around by deacons and things, and it's no different today. We still do that. So yeah, I think you're absolutely right. It does give you a better feeling, or a good feeling when you get there. It's quite interesting.
I've just thought of something which I think is incredibly important to discuss about the Mark degree, which I think it stands alone, perhaps with the OSM as well. But that's the Mark Benevolent Fund, and I know that obviously the Mark, as you quite rightly said previously, does an amazing job of rewarding people that put in work and you know, do kind of good charitable acts and giving to this benevolent fund. So I wonder if you could talk about that just ever so slightly, and kind of the Mark Benevolent Fund in general.
Yeah, although obviously that has its own president and its own deputy president, the Mark Benevolent Fund operates exclusive. It's separate, obviously, from the craft. It follows a similar principle. We have supported a vast number of other charities as well. The Mark Fund of Benevolence has made major donations to major organisations, but it also makes smaller grants to small organisations, and it makes grants to Mark Master Masons in times of need and distress. But there have been some considerable grants of many millions of pounds. We've done St John's ambulances. We did a lifeboat. We've supported mobile chemotherapy units. So there's been an enormous amount of activity. The Mark members are very generous in supporting that fund. And I think the Mark are very good at distributing it to worthy causes. I think there's a lot can be said about that fund. It has the small grants. Yeah, I mean, I could point a few of those out, but I think at the end of the day, it overarches, and it will sit for a Mason, for a member. It sits as an addition to what the craft does under its lodges. It's there to assist further. I think that's the kind of thing that it does. I think also Mark Grand Lodge might really need some airing as well, because I think when we're looking at the charity, it's also good to look at the formation of Mark Grand Lodge and how that kind of came into place, because I know you may be going on to that, but that kind of sets the scene on where the Mark really came from. But going back to the charity, yeah, it is big, and it's very, very popular amongst our members.
Absolutely. So I think now's a good time to talk about the formation of Mark Grand Lodge and how that kind of ties into everything, because I know that's something that's quite important to cover.
It really is, because it kind of sets the scene. I mean, we know with the history of the degree that we've been over that, but the history of Mark Grand Lodge is really interesting, and it shows its position, because Mark Grand Lodge was it was constituted on the 23rd of June in 1856. It's contrary to rumours that are spread by a lot of my colleagues. Believe me, I was not a visitor on that day. I really wasn't. Grand Lodge, although Grand Lodge was consecrated in 1856, there is actually evidence of the Mark degree being conferred on candidates as far back as 1760s. You know, in fact, there is evidence of the Mark degree being worked as far back as 1599 in Scotland. But wow. I must point out that neither the ancients nor the modern Grand Lodges worked the Mark degree. And even after the union of the two Grand Lodges, which was 1831, the degree was never worked by the United Grand Lodge of England. The degree was actually worked at those times by the Grand Lodge of all England and York. The first Mark Grand Lodges were formed between 1851 and 1856. There was 5 of them in total. Now, to be honest with you, if anyone's kind of like still awake at this point, which would surprise me, they'll realise that these 5 lodges were actually formed before the constitution of Mark Grand Lodge in 1856. In the quarterly communications of the United Grand Lodge of England, that's UGLE, in the quarterly communications of 1856, a resolution was passed to include the marked degrees as part of craft masonry. However, at the very next quarterly communications, the United Grand Lodge of England, the resolution that had previously been passed was reversed. And the craft went on to maintain its stance that pure and ancient masonry consists of 3 degrees and no more, namely those of the entered apprentice, the fellow craft, and the master mason, including the Supreme Order of the Holy Royal Arch. Now, that statement, which is known as the Preliminary Declaration, is still used today by United Grand Lodge of England. It appears on page 1 of the General Laws and Regulations for the Governance of United Grand Lodge of England. So, just a few months after that resolution to include the marked degree in craft Freemasonry was reversed, the Grand Lodge of Mark Master Masons was consecrated on the 23rd of June 1856. Now, that's amazing, really, when you consider that it's only been a matter of a few months in which to organise a consecration of a Grand Lodge and nominate Lord Lee as our first Grand Master. And it's even more amazing when you think that today, well, in most of the lodges in which I hold membership, we find it all very difficult to organise a dinner, let alone a consecration of a Grand Lodge. It kind of does show you, though, just how organised and progressive those founding members were when they formed Grand Lodge back in 1856. And that's something I'm really proud of. And I'm really proud to say that today is really still the case amongst our high rulers of Mark Masonry and the Secretariat at Mark Mason's Hall. Since 1982, get it right, Bill, our Grand Master, he won't please me for saying that, has been His Royal Highness Prince Michael of Kent. And as I'm sure you all know, he is the younger brother of His Royal Highness the Duke of Kent, Grand Master of the United Grand Lodge of England. So I think, that formation of Grand Lodge is really, really quite important, and it shows its position in the Masonic structure.
So we've spoken about all calibers of members of the Mark. We've spoken about how friendly it is, the ceremony being all encompassing and engaging, and it brought a smile to all of our faces. This seems a bit of a moot question, really, when you think about when you get to it. But Bill, who or what is the perfect candidate for the Mark degree?
That's a really difficult question, Neil. Thanks for that. I'm not sure there is a perfect candidate for Mark Masonry. I think it's more a question of Mark Masonry being the perfect candidate for someone. If it's a great fit for the individual wanting it, then that would be the perfect move for them. The Order of Mark Master Masons it's got a great deal to offer to prospective candidates, but in particular, I think it's got a great deal to offer to those who want an organisation with a true sense of belonging and community. It's an order that adopts a member-centric approach. It's got an enthusiastic membership. We have a clear purpose. It's an organisation that's committed to supporting its members, as well as those who find it less fortunate, as we touched on with the Mark Fund of Benevolence. And if that message kind of resonates with you or someone you know, then becoming a Mark Master Mason should make them the perfect candidate.
Well, Bill, thank you very much for answering all the questions that we've had for you so far. I mean, it's been a great discussion on about a degree that actually, an order that actually we all really love. I know throughout, if you listen to pretty much any podcast from this series and quite a few from the first series, we're all happy to gush about how much we love Mark. So it's been great to finally have a chat about what is potentially our secret top of the list. But what we like to do, as I'm sure you're aware, in this in season 2 of Brother, is ask our guests to do an elevator pitch and try and get as close to 30 seconds as possible in trying to convince those who may not already be a member of the order to join and explain the benefits, why they might like to join. It has been quite competitive so far. I'll just bring up the scoreboard here, the Star in the Reasonably Priced Car style scoreboard. So let's just zoom in a little bit and see. So at the minute, we've still got Knights Templar on top with 29.09 seconds. They did do a fantastic job. And I suppose, I don't know who you'd consider your closest rival. Maybe Ram. They came in at 31.85, so they're currently in 3rd place. So, I mean, you know, how are you feeling? Are you feeling confident?
It looks like something off of Top Gear, doesn't it?
Yeah. I mean, obviously, you know, other car-based motoring shows are available, and we certainly did not use that as any source of inspiration for creating this leaderboard. Of course not. But, you know, if you think that it looks like that, then that is, you know, just purely your opinion, of course. So, how are you feeling confident?
Yeah, I think if I can perform like the Ferrari performed on Sunday, we'll give it a go. Let's go and try for the top of the leaderboard. I very much doubt that we'll get there. I'll probably trip up around one of the bends or something of that. We'll give it a go.
Well, this is, of course, the last time we're going to do this. So wherever you come, that will complete the leaderboard, and that will be the end. We'll take a picture, we'll put it on the website, it'll be all over the social medias, and that will be the official leaderboard. So no pressure, Bill, but you are the keystone, one might say, to complete this bridge.
Very good. Very good.
Sorry, that was cheap. Right, okay. Anyway,
Okay,
Easy.
are you ready?
As ready as I'll ever be, I suppose.
Okay, I've got a stopwatch. 3, 2, 1, go.
If you're thinking of extending your Masonic experience and participation, when joining the Mark, you'll be joining a vibrant and welcoming order that is steeped in history, an order whose members share and communicate a real sense of belonging and community, an order that's enthusiastic, progressive, and member-centric. Our lodge meetings are convivial, our ceremonies provide important life lessons in an engaging and enjoyable manner, whether you're actively participating or not. When you're ready to extend your Masonic journey, I highly recommend you join and make your mark.
Okay. Right, we have the results. This is the final one. I've got the final strip here for Mark Master Masons. And the felt tip pen, we're ready to go. So, where do you think you've come first?
I'd be happy with the top 3, really. But anywhere below that, and I'll be putting the lid down on the laptop.
Right, okay. Well, it was under a minute, which is a great start. You did it, Bill, in 33.84, which puts you in 5th place.
Oh, no.
Underneath AMD and just above Royal and Select. There we are. That is the complete leaderboard, the final version of the Brother Beyond the Craft Elevator Pitch Challenge. And there you are, Mark Master Masons. Round of applause, though. It was a great effort, I must say. It was a fantastic effort.
Valiant effort, definitely. Bill, so first of all, it really is an honour to have you with us, kind of helping us deep dive into the Mark degree. I know that you have been involved for a long time. You're one of the faces at Mark Mason's Hall. So it means a lot to me personally that obviously that you jumped on and kind of gave your insight into the degree with us. So yeah, on behalf of us, thank you so much for jumping on and taking some time out of your evening. And I think, I think we're there, lads. I think we're there. So, Bill, if there's anything that you want to kind of plug, what Mark Grand Lodge are doing, any other messages that you want to get to any of our listeners, anybody watching on the YouTube page, now's your time, sir.
I think what I'd like to tell you is I mentioned that we're quite a progressive order, and certainly our Grand Secretary has quite a progressive approach to the way we develop our order. And I think over the coming years, and in the near future, I mean, after we need to recover from COVID, really. And as an order, we're trying very, very hard to look at that. And I think we'll be rolling out some stuff about that. We've already rolled out some information at provincial level to look how we can encourage our membership back and actively work with them to resume. Because I think our Grand Master said it all, which is we will recover from this. We may be leaner, but we'll definitely be stronger as a result of it. And I think we're also going to be looking at developing. I know there's another website on the way. I think we're looking greater details at social media and how we transmit news from our provinces to all of our members worldwide. Because one of the things that's concerned me for a while is that when you have your Twitter accounts, they seem to be provincial, and you don't necessarily get the information that's happening from around the rest of the Mark world, and you only really see what's happening in your own province. And I think we need to examine how we can bring that wider news into one place. So we're looking at things like that. But I think most importantly at the moment, it's looking at recovery and how we can safely get our members back to their local lodges so that they can participate back in what they enjoy. And hopefully by working together with provincial Grand Masters and lodge secretaries and brethren, we'll be able to bring that forward as soon as we can, because we do miss it. I miss it. I miss Grand Lodge meetings. I miss my ordinary lodge meetings, as I'm sure everyone does. And I can't wait to get back with my Mark colleagues. So I don't have anything in the way of adverts, but I certainly would like you all to know that we're very, very much looking forward to resuming duties with you all, and that whatever we can do to make life more comfortable whilst we're working on that, we'll do our very best at Mark Grand Lodge.
I think that was important to mention, actually, that the Mark degree was very quick to act with COVID and introduce the business meetings via virtual means, so that lodges could continue as much business without the ritual side as possible and keep that connection going.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, there was something that's come out today from United Grand Lodge of England, but you're right. We will allow business meetings to be transacted. And let's be honest, the business of the lodge needs to continue. We need that continuity. So that was a great move, and the Grand Secretary rolled that out really early. And there are other things that we're looking at. Some you can't do. I mean, you obviously can't hold virtual ceremonies. You can't properly tile those situations and things like that. But yeah, I think it's been a very steep learning curve. But I mean, hopefully we've managed to keep pace with that curve. And hopefully one day we'll be able to exceed that curve and as I say, come back to where we want to be, which is meeting face to face in that convivial atmosphere. I saw your podcast with Ian. I understand that you're sending him a odd bins delivery, so I'll clearly be looking forward to receiving my odd bins delivery after this.
Absolutely, no, and I will. I'll get that shopping basket filled up online, and we'll get that out to you. Bill, thank you so much. It really was a pleasure to have you with us this afternoon.
It's been my pleasure. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I just hope that I haven't bored too many people watching, and I hope that any that are watching that are not Master Masons have got something from it. And indeed, those who are Master Masons, I hope maybe there's been something in there that they could benefit from. And if you've had a lull moment, or particularly in these times where you're questioning whether you should be in what order, well, hopefully I've managed to ignite that passion again. And if I have, job done.
Amazing. What a way to finish season 2. As always, you can listen to the podcasts by visiting www.brothermasonic.co.uk, where you will find details of all of the platforms that you can find our dulcet tones on. This has been season 2, so any thoughts, anything about the mark, we'd love to hear them. Please tweet us at Brother Masonic, but also remember to tweet Mark Masons Hall at Mark Master Masons on Twitter as well.
Perfect stuff. Well, guys, as Taz quite rightly said, this is the end of season 2. So we have got a special coming to you very soon, all about Open House London. We were very lucky to be able to record in Grand Lodge in the Grandmaster's private robing room. So we'll be endeavouring to get that out before we start fresh on season 3, which we've got some super excited stuff planned. So yeah, we're really keen on that. Again, just to reflect what Taz said, if you are wanting to go back and check out any other of the podcasts, please check us out on www.brothermasonic.com. Tweet at us at brothermasonic, and as always, we are brother, you are too, and we will catch up with you very soon.
This is Brother Beyond the Craft with Neil Thomas Allen and Taz Bachu. This was a Brother production in association with Mark Masons Hall, presented by Neil Thomas Allen and Taz Bachu, with Jack Saunders, produced by Joshua Worley. You can follow us on social media at Brother Masonic on Facebook and Twitter.